This is Bob Sansevier with Pioneer Press Vikings beat reporter extraordinaire Jeremy Fowler.
Hi, Bob.
How you doing, kid?
Good.
And Pioneer Press Deputy Sports Editor John Plume. Jeremy. John Plume in the Tuesday paper did his mock draft. Frankly, I think it's loaded with holes. But I'm just curious. Okay, John, tell everyone who you picked. You're like the only guy in America picking this guy. It's a little, you're off the charts on it.
Well, nobody's picking...
You have to check the paper to see who you picked? Don't you remember?
Nobody's picking Prince Amu Kamara. No, I hope everyone heard that.
Okay, you just picked it because you're the only guy that can say it.
Prince Amu Kamara. No, he's an outstanding cornerback from Nebraska, regardless of what Football Outsiders has written about him. But and I picked him because if you look at the holes that they have on this team, you've got one cornerback, Cedric Griffin, coming off 2 ACL surgeries. Mm-hmm. You've got another cornerback coming off 2 meniscus surgeries. You've got another cornerback, Antoine Winfield, who's 34. And then you've got Asher Allen, who they picked 2 years ago in the 3rd round, who's never really shown a lot. He played a lot last year but didn't really have a big impact. So they do have a huge need at cornerback. Is it a bigger need than defensive end, quarterback, offensive line, defensive tackle? I think you could throw it right in there. And if he's available, I think it would be really difficult for them to pass on him.
Right.
He's a prototype, cover 2 kind of guy. Jeremy might have seen him play when he was covering Florida. So
yeah, I think if he falls to 12, I think that's a great pick. You could argue that cornerback is still a bigger need than, say, defensive line, which is the position everybody's talking about for maybe the Vikings at 12. But at least you can try to re-sign Ray Edwards if you want him. Mm-hmm. At corner, you're at the mercy of injuries with Griffin and Chris Cook. You just don't know how they're going to respond. I think the Texans will end up taking him, though, because they always need secondary help, and they pick at 11. So I don't think he'll be there. I think if he's there, that's a very good option for the Vikings.
Now, when he would also, obviously, as you had mentioned, they have some aging issues in the secondary and the injury. So there's nothing wrong with the pick. But Jeremy, what do you see him going? A lot of people think it's going to be a defensive end, if not the quarterback. And I still think that they got to get the quarterback.
I still think they'll trade back, maybe get a quarterback in late first round and recoup that 3rd round pick they lost in Randy Moss. I think that's what they might do at this point. But if you pick at 12, it still seems to me like a reach to get, say, a Jake Locker. I would almost be more inclined to get Ryan Mallett at 12, even though he's got the so-called character issues. I think he could be a more productive pro. I still think Locker could be good, but there's no guarantee there. You just don't know. He's not a safe bet. You'd be taking a risk with him, and 12 might be a reach. Obviously, Gabbert and Newton are not going to be there. Defensive line or a Prince Amu Kamara, if he's there at 12, is a safer bet. If you stay at that pick, that's what you might do. But they might get a Daquan Bowers or Cameron Jordan or J.J. Watt or one of those talented defensive ends there at 12 too.
Now, John, you're the resident draftnik. If there was no rumor, now he's confirmed the rumors, Ryan Mallett, had there been no issues related to his work ethic or drugs, would he be the first quarterback taken?
I think of all the quarterbacks, he's the most pro-ready style guy. I mean, he can make all the throws. He reminds me of Peyton Manning. Now, whether or not he turns out to be a Peyton Manning, I don't know.
Strong.
Very.
But he's 6'7", he's 235 pounds, 3-step, 5-step. He can do all of those things. He's a pocket passer.
You know what he reminds me of? And I'm not saying as a player or projecting to have the career, but coming out of college, he's reminiscent of Dan Marino, who had a lot of questions swirling around him about things that he had done wrong too. And he slid into the 20s, right? And he turned out to be a Hall of Fame quarterback.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of teams that are going...
Now, I'm not saying this guy's going to be a Hall of Fame quarterback, but you can get... When a guy has issues attached to him, he's going to slide. And a team could benefit if he straightened those issues out.
Well, I mean, he put up some great numbers at Arkansas. And the one thing I noticed in the Sugar Bowl is his lack of mobility. How does that work in a West Coast offense? I mean, that might be one of the reasons where the Vikings kind of stay away from him. But, I mean, you never know. Jake Locker seems to be more of a West Coast fit than a Ryan Mallett.
Yeah, well, at least with Ryan Mallett, you would have a great running game. He's the kind of guy that would need that. You have Peterson. I do think that the knock on him about his footwork, maybe a little exaggerated. I don't think he has Peyton Manning's footwork, but at least a lot of his throws, you watch his tape, he throws on the run a decent amount, or at least on as he's moving. He can kind of work the pocket pretty well, I think.
Now, John, in the Sunday paper, we will have, because you have done, a top 50 Viking draft picks based on value. And maybe you could explain a little bit more about that. So, I mean, it's not just going to be a 1 through 50 of the best players ever on the team. It's going to be 1 through 50 of the best players based on where they were drafted, correct?
Based on where they were drafted, what kind of impact they had with the team, how long their careers were. I mean, I think there'll be some surprises in there. You guys had some input in it, especially you, Bob. You argued, a lot about some certain players, which we won't mention here. But
well, we can mention them. I mean, I think you could. I don't think it hurts. People know who some of these guys are. I mean, I think we talked about guys like Scott Studwell. We talked about guys like Jesse Solomon.
Yeah, where does a Studwell fit who was drafted in the 9th round? 1,882 tackles, second all-time in the NFL.
And you know what?
Should he be the best Vikings draft pick? I guess we'll find out on
Here's
Sunday,
the other thing we need to find out, too, because I understand that the Denver Broncos were quite liberal in giving tackles to the guy who's rated number 1
Randy
all-time. Randy Gradishar for tackles. But that's probably another story for you to work on down the road. Now that you're...
No, but it's I think it's a really good list. It's always...
It is. You did a good job on the list.
It's always a good thing to put stuff like this together because it creates debate, it creates conversation.
Well, frankly, I don't think there's anything to debate. I think you nailed it. Anyone that complains about it's got issues.
Well,
they just don't know.
So
they don't know as much
you
about
have issues?
Well, now that he got it where
well, we all know Bob has issues.
He doesn't know as much about. No one knows as much about the list as you do because you did it.
Well, I did a lot of research on it, but I mean, you guys had some input in it, and no, I think it'll be a fun read, and there'll be an online component to it, and people should have a lot of fun looking at it.
Yeah, what was fun about it for me looking over it is when you base it strictly on value. Let's say you take a guy like Adrian Peterson, who's arguably the best running back in the game, but since he's picked 7th overall, where does he rank compared to a stud? Well, who you get as a steal in the 9th round? It's fun to debate that, and I think it'll be a great list.
Well, the other interesting thing too is I don't know that a lot of people realize that back in the 70s, the Vikings picked a lot of quality players when there were 20 rounds in the draft. Jeff Wright, a cornerback who made, I think, like 90-some starts in his Vikings career. A Milt Sunday who was picked in the 20th round. I mean, there's some amazing players where they were picked in later rounds and the careers that they had with this team. And, I mean, that was kind of the motivation for putting together the list, just the kind of impact some of these middle to late round guys had.
And should we save people the time of saying, where's John Randall's name?
John Randall is not on the list because he was not drafted by this team. Jim Marshall is not on the list because he was not drafted by this team.
Well, John Randall was a free agent, and I still argue he should have the asterisk next to his name.
He might be the only undrafted rookie free agent in the Hall of Fame. I'm not sure about that, but he might be.
Well, Johnny Unitas.
Well, there you go. I said might.
Wasn't he a free agent too?
I don't know.
You
would know that better than
the
me.
5,000th, maybe in the 5,000th round.
But yeah, anybody that's looking
I think he might have
for
been a free agent.
anyone looking for Mick Tingelhoff, Paul Krause, Jim Marshall, John Randall, you won't find them on the list.
They're on somebody else's list.
They're on somebody else's.
All right, we'll be talking lists and other things in the days, weeks, months, years ahead, decades too.